and you guys will hear my dog snoring
Is that what that
the
is?
entire.
I was looking at all my sound settings trying to figure out what the hell that sound was. The dog snoring is totally okay. No, I mean I think tonight's conversation is the key focus. So we're all here to listen to April.
Oh God, that sounds horrible. No. All right. So I'm just gonna talk a little, like maybe just 5 to 10 minutes real quick. I just want to say a couple of things about nutrition, I guess, as it relates to paddling fitness and longevity and health. The first thing I want to talk about is just calories in versus calories out. A lot of times when we start training, we pick up a new fitness routine. It's often paired with a time in our lives where we're looking to get a little bit healthier. And that's around the time we're feeling really motivated. We get motivated to start a paddling fitness, and we get motivated to potentially go on a diet or change our diet or eat differently. Two things that don't go well together is increasing how many calories you burn and reducing the amount of calories that you're taking in at the same time, because all too often your body kind of starts to freak out, and it goes from what it considers homeostasis, like this level stable intake and output, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm gonna exercise 3 to 5 times a week or more, and I want to lose weight, so I'm gonna eat a lot less. And those signals are so strong. That's why we lose a lot of motivation. We really get kind of that our energy starts diving, and week after week it gets harder and harder to maintain. And that's not usually our faults as people or paddlers. It's because of the drastic change in energy input and outflow. So as paddlers too, paddling is actually a very demanding sport calorically. I don't know. I found a research study that cited that paddling for 30 minutes, like vigorous paddling, burns as many calories as running for 6 miles, right? So that's, for people who hate running, that's really good news, right? It's
I hate
I like that. So stand-up paddling specifically, outrigger paddling, probably not going to burn quite as many calories because you're seated, but it's still at a core engagement, and especially if you've got choppy water to contend with. As a paddler, you almost need to eat a little bit more. So as you ramp up training, I wouldn't recommend dropping calories or anything at the same time. And you'll also hear a lot of people say things like, listen to your body, and try to eat intuitively or eat healthy foods. If you eat clean, whole foods, then you'll inevitably lose weight. And this just is not the case. I mean, it more or less is, but I wish it were that simple. And a lot of us are very poorly calibrated. I don't know about you guys, but I became, like in college and whatnot, I became very, call it like poorly calibrated to what I thought I was hungry for. You think you're hungry, or you think you're full. Because of the hyperpalatability of certain foods, and because of us like stuffing ourselves in Thanksgiving, and then kind of like, when we go on diets and we kind of starve ourselves a little, we have messed up. For the most part, a lot of us have kind of messed up our leptin, our ghrelin, which are our hunger hormones that tell us when we're full or we are hungry. And something that you can do that is going to help hugely with your training and your nutrition is to keep a daily, like just a journal, or buy a planner or something with days. And every day, like when you do your training, write what you did for your training and write what you ate that day, and try to start recalibrating your body and what you're feeling. But calories in and calories out, as you ramp up your training, possibly keep your diet the same for a little bit, and then start recording those feelings, like, I felt good today's workout. And if you start seeing like your subjective scores decrease, like you start reporting that you're feeling worse and worse week after week, then chances are you're not eating enough food to recover from your paddles. The other thing that's really hard about calories in and calories out, by the way, I just want to mention this really quick, is that the labels on the back of food can be up to like 20 to 30% off, and restaurant menus can be 200 to 300 calories off per meal. Over the course of a week, that can make a really big difference in what you think you're taking in and what you're actually taking in, right? Likewise, you could be under eating. If you undereat too much, A, the motivation will go away, B, the hormones will go out of whack, and then it'll change how much energy you're burning, like when you're sitting on your couch. It'll slow your overall metabolism down. So that's what people experience when they undereat but gain weight. It's still a matter of calories in and calories out. But what happens if you undereat is that your overall metabolism slows to account for you expending that energy in your workouts. So now throughout the rest of your day, you're really lethargic. Your blood oxygen saturation might be a little lower. Your general metabolism is just depressed and it's slowed down, because you're able to still maybe get those couple of workouts in each week with gusto, because you're like, oh, I ate and this and that. But everything else you do, a little bit of brain fog, everything else you do, just a little less calories being burnt in your day-to-day activities. So when that happens, you get really confused. I know I have in the past. You're like, gee, I'm eating less and working out more. How am I still gaining weight? You've essentially depressed your metabolism, everything you're doing outside of working out.
Consider it like hoarding. Your body your body wants to hold on to everything it possibly can, because it's a survival mechanism that's in our body, right? So if you're not putting it in there, your body's like, oh shit, let me just hold on to every calorie I possibly can. So
it does. Yeah. And so when you do go to eat, so when you finally break, because we will, so when you finally say to yourself, oh my gosh, like I'm hangry. I've been on this diet. I'm exercising. I'm really hangry. I'm going to eat ice cream tonight. I'm just going to do it. And I'm not picking on ice cream. I eat a lot of ice cream. I love it. It's a paddle people food. Ice cream. There are no good and bad foods, guys. So yeah, before we get any further, there's no foods are something you should well, I guess there's a couple things that I personally would never eat, but there's no such thing as a good and bad food. Studies in psychology are very, very clear that the value you assign to your food mentally almost has as much impact on how your body absorbs it as the actual content and the calorie content and the micronutrient content of that food itself. So if you're eating something like guiltily and you're telling yourself this is a bad food, turns out your body's going to process it differently. If you're like eating that ice cream and you're like, this is paddle fuel, this is health food, this is amazing. Believe it or not, like your brain totally impacts how your body is processing the calories that you're eating, which I love. So the next time I just got off the road from driving back from Florida, I was relegated to a couple of things I didn't want to eat on the road, but you just smile and you go, yum, yum. This is paddle fuel, yum, yum. And just tell yourself that it's awesome, even though it might not be. But yeah, so calories in and calories out, it is tricky. Like I said, because there's so much error on the back of what is reported. If you're using MyFitnessPal or some calorie tracking app, there's a high percentage of error that makes it not the best way to calculate what you're eating, and followed by the fact that, like how you're mentally processing your food. So I have a link to share with you guys in the chat if anyone is interested in macronutrient calculating. I like to follow these guys. It's called Precision Nutrition, and how they count calories. You can put in your activity level and everything, and what they spit out, instead of they give you an approximate count if you want to still try to keep a journal and just recalibrate yourself for a couple of days or a week or two. But they used hand portions. So there it is. They use hand portions for you to measure your carbohydrate, your protein, and your fat intake. And the cool thing about that is all of our hands are different sizes. If you're a bigger person that has bigger hands, and because your bone structure and everything's bigger, then chances are you need more calories. So if you did, like, if you adapt it to your hand size, it ends up kind of fitting your body for the most part. It's a really good resource.
So a pint of Ben and Jerry's fits in my hand really well.
It
So
does. That's paddle food. We've already covered this.
If you don't go Ben and Jerry's, you just go Vaughn's regular cookies and cream, less calories, you get the half gallon.
Then I use two hands. That's good. I got it.
I love it. I think honestly, as long as you're, in terms of like calories are one thing. And so I've sent you guys the nutrition calculator link. Calories are only going to get us so far. And so now you might know why you think you're taking in fewer calories, but things are not going as well as you had hoped. Again, if you're under eating other things in your body, you're depressing your metabolism, and you are also taking away from your recovery. Need I mention that, like, the most important thing about nutrition, the most important reason to eat well, is because the paddle workouts aren't what's going to make you a better paddler. It's the recovery from those workouts. And so fueling your body right before with the proper kind of carbohydrates, and then right after for carbohydrates, or maybe protein if that was a strength-based workout, is going to be really important throughout your day. And so consuming enough calories is step one. I like my Garmin spits out like an approximate how many calories I burn, because it's on all day with like the wrist heart rate monitor. And so it knows what I'm doing all day long. And then at the end of the day, it spits out an approximate number. I've found that for me, that's actually really low. It's probably about 500 to 600 calories off, because a lot of calorie counters for women, especially, are determining based on your height and your weight how many calories it thinks you're burning. It doesn't take into account what percentage of that weight is body fat versus muscle or even bone. So if you have very dense bones, or you do have substantial muscle, remember that anything that you put your information into might be too low as well, which is going to spiral you into that under eating category, where you might not be recovering as well as you can from your workouts. And it might be depressing your metabolism overall throughout the entire day. Step one, calories, eat, recover, get better at paddling. Step two is the macronutrients of said calories. So when we talk about macronutrients, that's the carbohydrate, the protein, and the fat. And that ratio is going to totally be very, very different for each individual. So to give you guys like a blanket statement there is beyond the scope of what I'm going to say. But the link that I shared will help you guys hone that in a little bit better. And it's going to give you those approximate ratios for protein, carbohydrate, and fat. I'm going to share a calories in, calories out article. If anybody, based on like just what I just said, if you kind of want to do a little bit more reading, if you found that interesting at all, and you want to get a little bit more in depth with that, I'm going to share that. And then I'm going to open the floor to questions, because I want this to be more interactive, this particular town hall. So if you have a question, you can post it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and be heard, but don't be shy, please.
So while we wait for questions, I'll ask you and Danny. So race day nutrition. So I was told many years ago that especially for endurance events, that you could only recover calorically about 1/3 of what you were planning to burn on race day. So if you're going to do 3,000 calories in whatever event you're in, then your fuel plan for the race should be about 1,000 calories. Is that like what's been your experience? Because I know a lot of people have questions about that. Like, how much should I be trying to consume when I'm racing? You know, especially on endurance events. So.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I know I'm not crazy enough to do those 100-mile, 1,000-mile challenge in April. I put in the 1 to 4 hour range,
right?
Like 5 if it's a bad day. But I found that that's a tough one, just because if you start measuring out exactly how many calories you're going to replenish, like when we do Molokai, sometimes it's 3.5 hours, sometimes it's 5 for the winning. That's a really big difference in what you're planning for. And then the other one is it kind of reminds me of how April was talking with the Garmin's. They say this is what your calorie output is, and
Right.
that's a really nice estimate. It's usually not exactly where you are. I mean, if the Garmin's working for you, calorie in, calorie out, that's great. But for a lot of that train often and or get into a training program, the metabolism goes up, the calorie intake is more. And I've always gone off of the trial and error, but I definitely need a lot more than 1,000 calories in a 3-hour, 3,000 calorie race. And my body in general over the years, through all the different sports, swimming, water polo, soccer, paddle, sprints, endurance, has always, it's the joke is make sure I don't overheat, because if the engine overheats, it breaks, and make sure I don't run out of fuel. And so I have heard this before. I've looked into the 1,000 calorie count on, like 3,000 calorie race. Right. And I'm at the end of it, it's anything with instant calories, because I just need to keep replenishing the engine. I burn hot, I burn often, the Garmin says I'm at 2,500 calories a day. I'm pretty consistent, 5 to 6,000.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and that's
like, you're burning 2,000. I'm like, nope.
Yeah. Yeah. My no training day is like, you only need 2,200 calories. It's like, that's something you have to recognize about yourself through your training. And then as April jumped into right away, I mean, nutrition is all about getting yourself ready to exercise, paddling, recover, get the gains. And it always starts with enough calories. As far as the race day goes, if you ever run out of fuel, you're done. And when I'm starting to run low on calories, a really good gauge for it while racing, and this is like that, I call it race day technique or real time nutrition, is you start getting that foggy brain and you start making bad decisions, or it's really hard to make a decision or a correct choice on just little things, from technique to course direction to, are you hungry? Oh yeah, I'm really hungry. It's already too late. So as far as nutrition and calories during the day, I don't like to run off a stock number. I think, stock number is, this is your starting point, start here, and then recognize very quick, yeah, that's plenty, no problem, or no, I need more. But I would always, in a race, because you spend so much time getting ready, error on the side of having more available just in case, because you don't want to do all the prep work, get to come up short in calories and go, what happened? Ran out of gas.
What are you fueling with, Danny? Like, so during the race, you said you want stuff that's quick fuel that you'll process quickly. So what are you picking?
So I don't run the scientific side of things. I run the air just within an amount of time. Back in the day, 15, 16 years ago, it was Gatorade worked, but it had a limit to it. Now we found better versions of Gatorade, I call it. I use the EFS system, not because of anything special, but I know for long periods of time, I can drink it. I don't get sick of it. It doesn't upset my stomach. I know 10 years ago, I used to use Perpetuum, which is really good. Gives me stomach issues over time. But physically, I always felt great, other than the end of the race, I had gnarly stomach issues. During race day, I have Endurolyte pills, which are great for that. I ran out of that electrolyte salt stuff, and I just need a quick something to basically prevent me from cramping. A lot of the stuff I do for like Molokai is I try and plan the nutrition properly, knowing that at some point I'm going to make a mistake and I'm going to need the Endurolite pill to fix it. Or the other one I found is it's called Master Amino Acid. It's MAP pills. And it's just the amino acid that your body, what you're supposed to get from protein. I actually started taking it during a race, probably about 8 years ago on accident, thinking it was an Endurolite, just grabbing something and going. And what I found is that eliminates my foggy brain syndrome. When you hit that 2 hours into a race and you start trying to remember what you're supposed to be doing, and people yell at you and you just sort of like stare at them blankly for a few seconds, but it does not fuel the nutrition part of your body of continuing to function. It more clears up the mind, keeps you moving, but I still have to remember to eat. I have to remember to take in enough nutrition, but it does help with me making good decisions as far as just, it's almost like the sugar bonk when you run out of energy and you just sort of fog out. This helps me delay that. It's just a couple of tricks I've learned, super basic stuff. You know, the EFS is an electrolyte. It's got a very little bit of protein in it somewhere. I love the Perpetuum because of the protein that it had. And I know that's something my body needs a lot. The electrolyte pills, like the Endurolites, I do the Endurolite Extremes because I don't want to grab 4 when I'm in trouble. I just want to grab 1. And the Master Amino Acid pattern, and so MAP pills.
So you're all liquid during the race. You're not
You need your hands.
What?
You need your hands to paddle.
Yes.
Right.
It's found, especially for like Molokais and stuff, is I've eliminated chewing, breathing, and paddling at the same time, because you only get 2 of those. You don't get 3.
Right.
And that's a big deal for me. Considering most of the races come down to a handful of seconds after 3 to 5 hours.
The thing I like the most is that Danny's done like that on the nutrition side. You're all trial and error, and you've kind of learned. And I came at it from the very scientific. Like I have this master's in marine science, and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to calculate how many grams of fructose, glucose, and galactose, and I'm going to blend my carbohydrate sources for maximum absorption. And I did all this crap, and did a ton of math. And I pretty much eat the exact same thing now that Danny eats. So however you want to come about it, whether it's, through self-discovery or you want to read a bunch of articles and do math, at the end of the day, it is very similar. So in those shorter races, I use Vitargo, which is a slower burning carbohydrate. I also use that for kind of middle to long distance racing. In sprints, I use something that's a little more quick burning. And what you were saying about the calories estimated, Paulo, for the whole day or, for your whole event, that's not during the race, right? So you want to, that's your pre-race breakfast, maybe a banana or a snack, a little sip of pre-race drink mix. Some of those calories can be consumed during the race, depending on the intensity of the race. If it's really intense, then all of your blood flow, all hands on deck, so to speak, neurologically, are going to fuel your muscles and provide those with fuel. And there's not going to be a lot of extra energy just lying around to help you digest.
Correct.
So you don't want to consume a ton of calories necessarily while doing an intense race, because you're just going to cramp up and seize up and have a very bad time, versus a 100-mile race or something incredibly long where you're definitely aerobic threshold and lower. You can afford to eat more during that race because your body is at a lower intensity and can afford to send a little bit of resources over to digestion. For the longer one-day events, so for me, in the 100 and in any long distance event, I just also want to mirror what Danny said. I keep 3 different drink mixes on long races separate. I have plain water, because trust me, no matter how much you love the flavor of something, or even the unflavored, it tastes like something. Unflavored still tastes like something. No matter how much you love that flavor, after drinking it for 5 hours straight, you're not going to like it anymore. You just don't. So plain water, always have some plain water, whether it's just to rinse your mouth out, or to regain balance in your body. Secondarily, electrolytes. So same tabs that Danny uses. I was buying some called sport salts for a while. They stopped making it. So now I blend my
those
own.
are good.
Yeah, those were the best. And they stopped making it. So I just ripped off the recipe off the back of the bottle and ordered the individual components. So now I make my own. I'm like, it works so good that that's the only thing I want now. But so electrolytes, because your brain has to communicate to your muscles. If you burn through all of your ions, all your ionic salts, then all of a sudden your brain cannot literally communicate to your muscles. If you burn through all your little electrons, no electrical pulses will be sent and you'll just be stuck like this. Electrolytes I keep separate, and my carbohydrate drink mix. So those are the three things I'll have on my board or my boat at all times. So if I feel like a little crampy, you know, when you go to switch hands and the one hand kind of stays T-Rex position for a second, you're like, oh snap, I need to drink some electrolytes. So you drink electrolytes. If I start to feel lethargic, like I'm running out of power, running out of energy, then I drink my carbohydrate mix, get more calories in, more fuel in. If I don't feel anything at all, I just keep sipping water to maintain that homeostasis. So that comes back to developing a little bit of feel. If you're gonna go the feel route, like Danny did, and I think everybody should, write it down. Like literally just go get one of those little planners that have day slots and write, today I paddled 6 miles. I did 10 1-minute intervals. I felt really good.
Well, that's also your log, right? Your log on your Paddle Ninja site. You got that comment section right there.
Absolutely. I would recommend using the Paddle Ninja log because it'll be searchable at some point. So you'll be able to search the word good or the word bad and start looking for trends. Like, oh, I felt bad after I did eat that pint of Ben and Jerry's. Like then.
That's actually a huge, huge value to logging it on the site. I have years of logbooks of me training for Molokai Solo, training for Carolina Cup on the stand-up. And I have to go find a binder. I have to go flick through the pages. I have to look at the workouts, the mileage, the hours. And then under each day, there's a felt good, felt bad, tired, strong. And I have to go physically look through each one and go, okay, hey, here's a 2-week cycle where I peaked at the end of it. I had a great race day. But to be able to just type and say, hey, when did I feel good? And boom, 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 here's the 2 weeks of workouts. And, oh, I got a good night's sleep. I ate this. Like, you'd be surprised the things you note down in your notes that are important to you. Combination of how you feel, the workout you did, and, hey, I ate the Ben and Jerry's, or I had a steak, or whatever it is. I have some weird notes in there, but to be able to log that and just look back in a second is so valuable and just saves me so much time.
Yeah, it really does. Like before the 2019 Gorge downwind, the OC1, somebody had left Halloween candy, an old bag of Halloween candy in my creepy van. So a big bag of Twix. I ate Twix every day before I had a really good race. So is it the secret fuel or is it the carbohydrate?
It was the red 14 or whatever it is in the Twix.
No, oh God, no. That screws me up bad.
My biggest problem is I always cramp up. How can people know that they have good electrolyte balance prior to the race? And obviously that starts, a week before, 2 weeks before. Like give them some of that.
Electrolyte balance, because I've seen people drink too much water to the point of hyponatremia, and I'm sure you guys have heard of that. If you overhydrate with just plain water, even on a day-to-day basis, you dilute your salts. And if you did go like race with a ton of water because you're like, oh, I got to stay hydrated pre-race, you're actually going to dilute your salts so much. You run the risk of like an abnormal heart rate, passing out, dizzy. There's a lot of dangers with that. Over time, I've worked myself up. I drink a gallon of water every single day. So I have one of those glass gallon jugs, like the old cider jugs. I just fill it up first thing in the morning, and that's what I drink from throughout the entire day. If I were to drink only that, then I would have to supplement. Like I'd have to salt my food a lot. But instead, I add a little it's like a trace mineral and ionic trace minerals. You can do powder, or I have drops. I add that to my gallon. So I'm adding my electrolytes at all times. So you want to maintain that kind of hydration going into a race. People do it pre-race because people want to be on their game, but I think that that's just good practice for every day of your life.
Yeah,
You'd be surprised what things stop bothering you if you're well hydrated.
I like using the I'm with you. I like using the Pedialyte. I get the little sticks in the powder, and I just pour them into a jug of water and I sip it.
That's funny because one of the last question Travis just asked in the chat was Pedialyte good or bad? I personally, I don't like it, but there you hear it. These two guys love it. So Beth asked, said she kept her weight the same, but did like a body recomposition, reducing fat, increasing muscle, but would like to reduce weight 5 to 10 pounds without losing more muscle and feeling fatigued. And because paddling isn't a power endurance sport, it does like drag, our weight in the boat, like our weight on the board matters a decent bit, because we increase our drag. So it behooves you to be slightly lighter, but not to the point. It's a power to weight ratio. If you have enough power to move whatever your weight is, I wouldn't stress about it too much. And that's part of like your training log too, right? Like if you're keeping track of your weight as well, alongside of some of maybe your sprint times or your 5K times or your 10K times, you can see where you're at. Like, oh, hey, I dropped a little bit of weight. I was a lot faster. Or, hey, I dropped weight, but I got slower. You know, you might be, it's counterintuitive. Like you think that doing something is going to make you quicker, but it might not necessarily. Because I've tried a couple of times to lean out. My body doesn't like to be lean. It likes to be well fed, to race. And it doesn't look great in the pictures all the time, but you know, if I'm going to go faster, you know, with my pint of Ben and Jerry's, then that's I'm gonna go faster with that. So that's just
something I've learned is the distance of race. Leaning out has value until you go a certain distance. What especially in paddling, all forms of paddling, there's an element of weather, current, waves, but once you start going beyond that 45 minutes to an hour, I found it for me, it's about the hour 20, hour 25. Being lean below that is helpful for speed and aggression and intensity. But once you start going over that, I call it the hour and a half range, there is a certain level of reserves you have to carry to continue on. And if you don't have those reserves built in, call it nutrition, call it body type, whatever you want, is right about an hour and a half is when your body, there's no buffer for I underate. And that's where the foggy brain, that's where bad decisions start happening. I'll bounce between 170 and 190, usually right around 180. And 178 is my limit for anything hour and a half plus. If I start going under that, nutrition wise, lean out, I can make the body look great and I can do 45 minutes to an hour full blast. But everything beyond there, if I want to do a Molokai race, if I want to do a 2-hour race, if I want to do Carolina Cup on a stand up, I actually have to put in an extra 5 or 6 pounds just to buffer the back end of the race so that I don't just at some point just sit up, put my hands up and go, I'm out.
If you were someone who, so if I were Beth so I don't know,
right.
You know, what you do as a living the rest of your day outside of paddling, your age, your bone density, and your current muscle mass, that all plays into like what I would recommend to do. But I would start out like doing an assessment, seeing how much I eat right now. So I would track what I was eating for 1 week to see what like my carbohydrate, protein, and fat ratios currently are. And then when I was doing strength training, so if I wanted to do a cut and get to fighting weight, as she called it, if I wanted to do a cut and get to fighting weight, I might reduce my carbohydrate intake if I'm not doing a lot of aerobic base miles on the water. If you're doing a decent bit of cardio, you're going to have to consume more carbohydrate, at least before and after your paddle. Don't eat it. So that's where nutrient timing comes in. If you are paddling and doing a cut, make sure you consume the carbohydrates right before, during, or right after the paddle. Don't eat the carbohydrates the rest of the day. To make the cut, your lower carb, maybe just throughout the rest of the day, or if you're not paddling at all and you're just looking to do a body cut, like a body recomposition, you can reduce your overall carbohydrate intake. You're going to replace those calories. You're not going to really reduce your caloric intake. You're going to reduce the carbohydrates and increase the protein potentially, and do some heavier lifting. So heavy lifting does help the metabolism run hotter for the rest of the entire day. And so you'll burn more calories throughout the day with heavy lifting. My body responds, like physique wise, responds well to lower carbohydrate, heavier lifting. But if I paddle a lot, you can't ignore the carbs. So a lot of times you do those things alongside of one another. And like I said, that's where nutrient timing just kind of comes in. If you give your body the signal to lift heavy once or twice a week while you're doing the cut, and you're taking in enough protein and even, enough carbohydrate. I'm not like pro keto. Let me just say that. I don't think that that's a good long-term strategy for anyone. When you eat carbohydrates, it's like your little spark plugs that ignite the fat that you have stored in your body to be able to be used as fuel. So yeah, I would, depending on where you are in your season, make your weight adjustments early in the season, because then you've got a good buffer until your time trials or your race to say you could almost go in deficit for a little bit. If you prioritize protein intake and recovery still, you could still go in a slight deficit, maintain your muscle, catabolize like your fat, eat, like burn through some of your body fat stores. And yes, you might feel a slight lack of energy, but if you do that early enough in the season, it's not detrimental.
No, I would definitely agree with that. Is the body composition and the goal is all starting right away at the beginning of your training, and not trying to tweak your body composition at the end. It's really hard to try and shed weight right before a big event.
Oof, it's the worst thing to do.
Don't do it.
Sprints, you lose power. Distance, you lose the reserves. And then the quality of training and recovery goes away when you do that.
Yeah.
So that's, if you're cramming, I guess you can do it during the power portions where like you can cut some carbs, but realistically you want to kind of do it at the beginning of the season when everything's low intensity. You can kind of scale it out. And the biggest thing is when you cram, you cut corners and you're going to miss something. If you do it early enough, you could kind of scale it in properly where you can redistribute what you need and then peak off of that.
Well, yeah, Beth had extended the question. She said extreme heat, Florida summers, struggle getting on the verge of heat exhaustion. Any tips for nutrition, water, salt intake prior to, during, and after training? And she also asked what our thoughts are on salt tablets, especially in the Florida summers. So yeah, I think we both, Danny and I both mentioned the sports salts, and I'll grab the recipe for what I've been making at home. But yeah, I like sports salts and drinking plenty of water.
The Endurolite tablets, same thing as the sports salts, but if you're doing the Endurolite tablets I found, because they're capsuled. You could take them and your body's got to dissolve the capsule to get it. You can do it this way. I don't recommend, but again, I look at all those tablets as you schedule out a certain amount before the race. This is what I'm going to take at 1 hour, and then I'm going to take like 2 at 1 hour. I'm going to take 3 at 2 hours, blah, blah, blah. And at a certain point, the race plan gets really tough. You forget it. Little trick on the Endurolites: if you bite them, they taste terrible, but it goes straight into the mouth and instant uncramp.
It's like the pickle juice trick.
Yeah. You're like,
if you're getting cramps, it's actually, the research has shown that, yes, that like, even though it started with the salts, the way to stop a cramp instantly, and it's called Caleb Tree's Amish Cramp Stop Formula. And I put it in a little 5-hour energy bottle, and I put it in the side of my pack. You drink that stuff, and within 2 minutes, any cramps you're having are gone.
Yeah.
It's miraculous. And because it does a neurological reset. It's like the reset on the back of your internet router. You're like, gee, my internet's not working. You just take a shot of that and you're like, oh, it's back on.
That's what the hot shots does that too, with the capsaicin, the stuff from the hot peppers.
Exactly. I just buy the Amish.
And you just and you have to make the face when you drink it, or when you bite into the pill, you just be like, ugh, and then cramp goes away.
For women specifically, we are better able to regulate heat. I think it's in our luteal phase. Like if turns out that part of your cycle, you're hot. You're just freaking hot all the time, and it's hormonally related. And so based on like your levels of progesterone and estrogen and testosterone, you may just physically be unable to dissipate that heat. I highly recommend, if you have not read the book Roar by Stacy Sims, that book goes pretty decently like into detail of what times and where your hormone levels might be premenopausal, postmenopausal, like and or premenopausal, like throughout the entire cycle, how to best hydrate your body through all the phases. And she got just some of the tips are cute, like put ice in your Camelback. And then other times she does recommend specific salt ratios to mix into your Camelback to rehydrate based on, where your hormones might be. Like sometimes you just get out there and you're like, God, I'm hot. And gee, no one else seems this hot. It happens.
For me in Panama and then here with the heat, it all boils down to my hydration during the week. You have to sweat, and there is things that people do training that for some reason they stop sweating, and that's usually because you don't have enough salts, enough minerals, enough stuff in your body. You got to spend time in a sauna. You got to spend time like teaching your body to sweat, especially people who live up north and come down here and haven't been in this kind of heat.
No, I think that actually supports the article that our most recent article on the Paddle Ninja blog was talking about like dressing for cold weather. Because the ACA's official, like their professional recommendation on wearing a wetsuit and dressing for immersion is air plus water equals 120. And to which some of my UK friends said, we would be in a wetsuit or indefinitely. We would never take it off, even in the summer. And they're adapted to those temperatures where if they were a wetsuit, this is the opposite end of the spectrum, but if they were to wear a wetsuit in those conditions, they would get heat exhaustion. So it has a lot to do with your body, what you naturally expose it to regularly. Like all winter, I left my thermostat on like 59, 60. Most people come into my house and be like, well, gosh, this is cold. If I can't like live in that cold, then I have no business signing up for the Yukon 1000. And in the summer, I pretty much just turn my thermostat off and I'm like a lizard just sweating in my office, like sweat all over my keyboard. But it's 89, 90 degrees, you adapt, like your body gets used to them. There's certain toxins that can only be removed via sweat. as well. So it is important to sweat. And then I guess my last point on this is not paddling related at all, but as a society, as a species, we use a lot of energy. We're using a lot of electricity, a lot of energy, almost more than I think we're all using, way more than our fair share. And if we keep our thermostats lower in the winter and higher in the summer, not only are we becoming better adapted, like physiologically, but we're also contributing to less frivolous energy use. I'll leave all that for another day, but I think it's socially responsible to improve your hot and cold fitness.
I'm going to move to this question that T put on here with the daylight and paddling later into the day. Because I can feel you. I can totally feel you on this one. Because you get home and sometimes, at least me, I get home and if it's not bolted down, I want to eat it. What I like is Tailwind Nutrition has a recovery shake. And if I take that, it's you put it in a shaker just with ice water. If I take that within that half hour of getting off the water, I'm comfortable. I can get home, I can sit down and I can eat, sensible and not anything super heavy.
For me, I will just eat everything. No, for nutrient timing, like if you're worried about eating a really heavy meal at the end of the day, as long as you've adjusted kind of your macros throughout the rest of the day so that you know that you've gotten enough protein, carbohydrate, fat, you can just plan that last meal. Sometimes I plan in ice cream. Or sometimes I plan in a salad. I mean, yes, listen to your body, but understand that craving or not craving certain things is also feedback. So if you're like craving chocolate a lot, that might mean that you're deficient in magnesium. So magnesium, there's a lot of magnesium in chocolate. So if you happen to crave chocolate, that could be why. Our bodies do become very quickly addicted to sugar. So if you're craving ice cream all the time, then you might need to recalibrate like your sugar level. If your body's saying, gee, I don't want to eat something heavy after I paddle late into the evening, what is it that's so heavy about what you're eating? That might not be a good meal at other times of the day either. So maybe take a step back and reassess what that is, and maybe your body just doesn't like that food also.
I always found planning is just the number one. Even if you're wrong, planning is better than coming home and just looking around and be like, I'm so hungry. I can't believe I did that to myself. So in general, you look at Paddle Ninja platform, you're planning and then you're looking at it. You can record it. And so one, just start recording what you're doing, what you're eating, when you feel good, when you feel terrible, and then take the step to like, I'm going to plan to whatever extent you want. If you want to plan out the protein to carbohydrate ratio that you need to train for 250 meters versus 750 meters, great. If you want to just start recording and then go, man, lasagna good, pizza bad, good to know. Let's start there. Right. But you got to come home from practice with a plan on what you're going to eat, or you're going to eat the first thing you see in the fridge. I always eat the first thing I see in the fridge on Tuesdays and Wednesdays because those are the days my wife is at work and I'm in charge of dinner. And terrible at planning. But Thursday and Friday, super good. She's got a whole schedule.
Right. That's awesome. Beth said she sweated today in 60 degrees. Travis wants to know
caffeine before
race.
Race.
Caffeine intake. I drink coffee. I'll do a double shot espresso. And actually in 6-man racing, all the girls they got laughing because I bring dark chocolate covered espresso beans.
Oh, those are delicious.
Those are awesome.
So yeah, I over caffeinate sometimes on race day.
Yeah, in general, I drink coffee every day, multiple cups, and it's it's one of those things where if it's in your routine, it's in your routine. I I've never really noticed a big difference between 1 cup and 8 cups or like whatever the magic number is. But I have noticed in my routine, because I tend to train 2 to 3 times a week, like before dark, that the only thing I put in my body before 2 or 3 of my trainings a week is coffee, and it works for me. And that's a combination of my body's used to it. I do it all the time. And, or when I first started, it totally worked, but I didn't drink coffee till I was like 24. And now it's something that I have every single day, all the time. It's just part of my routine. And what I personally feel is we do a French press now, not for any of the nutritional benefits, but I noticed the routine of waking up a little bit earlier and pouring the coffee and pressing the coffee and heating. That routine for me, it's almost like a warm up for me in the morning of like, this is how I get ready to go train.
Totally agree with you on that. The routine of making my coffee in the morning is absolute. I grind my beans, I put it in the thing, the whole nine. Yeah.
I actually use that routine for race days as just part of the habit of this is how I get rolling. And on a race day when I'm paddling really far, I add this banana and this bowl of oatmeal.
Yeah, it like the rituals, the routines are absolutely huge. Angela mentioned she missed her coffee Saturday, and yeah, if you go through those caffeine withdrawals on race day, that's no bueno either. Or any.
I can't tell you how many times the wrong pair of pants I wore and I just wasn't ready. Not the reds. The reds are terrible. I need the greens.
Yeah, don't be so attached to your routine. Always have like a plan B, right? Be able to keep moving. Don't let like a hiccup, like what Saturday morning, my van broke down as I pulled into the race site. I just left it there and went about my business. I was like, well, screw that thing. But you just keep rolling, right? Don't get so hung up on your rituals that you are not flexible. Set up your rituals, set up your routine, stick to it within reason. But whenever something doesn't work, just keep rolling with the punches and try to develop kind of like that athlete champion mindset, right? It's not just nutrition, like that's everything you do. And I know I mentioned that how you feel about your food influences how you absorb it and how you process it. I think the same could probably just be said about coffee. If you think coffee is like really bad for you as you're drinking it and you're like, God, I should really cut out coffee, this is so horrible, then it's probably bad for you and your body's not going to like it. If you're sipping it and you're calm and you're cool and collected and you're grateful for that hot cup of deliciousness and you're just thinking, gee, you know, how lucky I am to be drinking this warm coffee before getting on the water. And you're coming from a really positive mindset and a place of gratitude and healthy mental outlook, then I think it's fine.
I think that you just touched on something that everybody should, I just want to retouch on it. the positive mental outlook. I mean, so Saturday I was with April and it wasn't just her van that broke down. I mean, she was rolling with punches like Muhammad Ali was throwing them at her. And I see her out on the water right before the start. And she's like, I'm just going to race. I'm happy. I'm sitting on my canoe. Like the look on her face, she's like, I'm on my canoe. I'm on the water. This is my happy place. I'm going to roll with it.
I did say that, didn't I?
Yeah, I remember that. And I was like, yeah, you go. Like, and that's the truth, right? At the end of the day, if you think if you approach a hard workout or a hard day saying this is going to suck, you're right.
It's going to suck.
You're right. You know, like you can or you can't. You're right. You know, so and April is a perfect example of that on Saturday. She was just like, I'm on the water. It's all good. Everything else.
There you go. We were out there in the Atlantic and Paul was like, what are you thinking? Like race strategy, like for the, like where we're aiming towards the jetty. I said, you know what, man? I didn't even warm up. Like my van broke down. I'm walking everywhere. I didn't get like my nutrition right. I didn't have time to do anything. I said,
her dog got kicked out of the park.
What's in the canoe? I'm in the Atlantic Ocean. The sun is shining. I'm paddling that way.
Yeah. She goes, I'm going to go that way faster than you. I go, okay. That was pretty much it.
That's a plan, right?
Yeah. Well, I think we are going to start to wrap this up. I'm going to take the comments and some of the questions. I know some people asked for recipes and what our preferred drinks are and stuff, and we'll send that out in an email to kind of touch on everything that we talked about tonight.
It might be a good. Somebody mentioned if we could share some of our preferences in the forum. Yeah, that could be fun.
Yep. So, but guys, also, take advantage of the forum and give us all the feedback, things that you'd like to, things that you'd like to see us bring to you next quarter when we have our next town hall.
Michael asked about stickers.
We have stickers.
Stickers. Hold on. Yeah. Do you have one to show anybody?
So,
yeah, we got new swag is in the works. Like, we got stickers, hats, or visors.
Oh, can I say something? I want to thank you guys, because during COVID and during all this craziness, you guys have kept me and my friends sane. And it's just been such a delight that every morning we get up and we do our workouts, and you guys are awesome.
Yeah, I want to second that. Robin and I, every Tuesday, Thursday, do your workout, and it's kept us sane for this entire year. We do it religiously.
Thank you.
Religiously.
And we talk you guys up with all our other paddling buddies.
Every Tuesday. 6:15.
But how do you feel physically? So mentally, you're feeling good. That's the biggest win. But physically, how are you feeling?
I feel good. I raced across Tahoe, and I was the first solo female paddler to cross. So you guys helped out a lot.
So awesome.
And
Congratulations.
And then the question, I think I accidentally sent that to you privately, but
beer after practice, good or bad?
That's your carbs.
It's good.
Carb loading. You know what? I'll let Danny answer that one.
No. That's why we plan post-workout meals. Otherwise, you end up with a beer.
My experience with beer, not the light beers. If you're gonna do like a beer to replace your glycogen stores, one of like those really. Have you seen like the super dark German beers that have like sediment still in the bottom of the bottle?
Right.
Oh yeah,
yeah, like those, almost like where there's still some like the yeast in there. Those are actually the best for recovery and replenishing glycogen. They might be a little strong, but you want one that might
only
have
one
a
or
little
two.
bit of sediment.
only one or six of them. You're good.
Not 6. 6 doesn't work. I tried 6. It's 1 to 2 depending on your metabolism, and you really should have real nutrients. But a beer is the fastest thing that'll get in your belly.
That's true. Yeah,
I think fish tacos and a beer.
Ooh.
Yeah.
and I tell myself in my brain that this is really good for me.
As long as your mind says it's good, it's good.
Exactly.
Just look at Paolo and then look at April and decide which one drinks the most beer.
and you would probably guess wrong.
Right. That's actually funny because and so when it comes to like the macros we talked about, if your macros are good, like most days, and you're good for pretty much the entirety of race day, one big meal, like one big cheat meal after a race, or after your heaviest day of training, that's actually going to improve your weight loss potential, like those little cheat meals, because your body always knows that you're not depriving yourself. Like food and good stuff is on the way.
Oh, yeah.
If you are hitting your stuff 80% of the time, you're golden. Strive for progress, not perfection.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yes. And I have to say, on a side note, my kids were in the house who have been telling me that paddling's not a sport because they're football players. So it was so great to hear how many calories I am burning.
Tell them you know a football player who is now a paddler.
I know. Well, I'm getting one close to it because he's surfing and he says, I can rock your boat. And I'm like, okay, go and do it.
All right, guys. Well, thank you again. And we look forward to seeing everybody's progress.
Yeah.
Thank you again. You guys are awesome.
Good night, guys.
Thanks.
Awesome. Good night. Thank everybody for joining. I'll share the recording later.